The Unitarian Universalist Church of Ventura, California presents a homily by UU Society of the High Desert President Ross Quinn, titled 50 Years of UU Hitchhiker's Theology, recorded on Sunday morning, August 9th, 2020.
Good morning and welcome to worship with the Unitarian Universalist Church of Ventura. We are a learning, growing, kindness spreading, and fracture healing community of resistance and resilience. Our minister, the Reverend Dana Warsnop, is away today. I am Worship Associate Krista Mendelson, and I am joined by Worship Associate Joe Hutchins and a whole team of folks who have collaborated to bring this service into being, including our guest presenter, Dr. Ross Quinn. Ross and I first met at a yoga retreat at Camp de Venneville Pines, and here's a little more about Ross in his own words. Dr. Ross Quinn is a fourth-generation Californian, and his parents were founding members of our church. He grew up in Ventura. He attended medical school in the Dominican Republic, completely in Spanish. Then he moved to Canton, Ohio, where he had a private practice for 10 years. Ross left that to be a full-time prison physician with the Federal Bureau of Prisons in 1987. Ross was able to return to California with his wife Karen in 2005 to Victorville to be the chief medical officer there, where they still live. Ross was very active in our church from the beginning, attending Sunday school classes and liberal religious youth high school meetings. After leaving Ventura, he stayed active in the liberal religious youth organization, including working at their headquarters in Boston. He has been on the board for Camp de Venneville Pines and is currently active in their local lay-led church in Victorville, the Unitarian Universalist Society of the High Desert. First, we have an announcement from member Debbie Norris regarding our current UU the Vote campaign.
I wonder if some of you have been at home at this time during sheltering in place, feeling isolated and helpless, that there's no way you can make a difference. In our church, there's a deep moral imperative to change our world and our country for good. And we know how you can do that and still stay safe. UU the Vote, UUA.org approved program that began at our church back in early January is still going. We have a major letter writing campaign to the state of Georgia. We're writing to registered voters who are at risk for not voting and for being removed from the voter rolls. Because we applied for and received a grant, we have funds to pay for the postage and the envelopes. We write these letters at home, and we try to encourage suppressed, mostly minority voters in this swing state. You can write in your own home at your own pace or join us on Zoom each Thursday for a virtual letter writing party. We'll give you all the details you need. We have a prescribed letter on which you can write your own thoughts on why you vote. It encourages people who might otherwise not make their votes heard. Like John Lewis said, our vote is our most important voice in this democracy. For me personally, it's been really cathartic to write these. When I put my thoughts into these letters, it really empowers me and makes me feel better. It's a good coping mechanism. I feel I'm accomplishing something good with every letter I write. If you'd like to help us, go to the UUCV Facebook page, click on UU the Vote, and ask for a batch of letters. We'd be really happy to have your help. Give yourself something positive to do during this time. Feel like you're accomplishing something for the greater good. We would really appreciate your help. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. It is so good to be together once again. Let us enter sacred space.
Good morning. We hope everyone has a chalice or a candle to light, and of course, something to light it with so you can avoid any technical difficulties. And I encourage you now at this time to light our chalices all together.
The worship team has chosen to reintroduce the UU affirmation that our children often say together at the beginning of their weekly RE classes. I now am inviting my kids, Garrick and Danica, to share the UU children's affirmation. And we ask you to repeat each line after them, which is what Mark and I will be doing. And join in with the hand gestures.
We are Unitarian Universalists.
We are Unitarian Universalists.
We are the Church of the Open Mind,
We are the Church of the Open Mind,
the Loving Hearts,
the Loving Hearts,
and the Helping Hands.
and the Helping Hands.
We take care of the earth and each other.
We take care of the earth and each other. Thanks, guys.
Each Sunday, this congregation gives away our collection to an organization in the larger community or to funds to help people in our own church. We invite you to donate online. You'll see the link on the next slide, which was also posted in the chat as a direct link. Our offering today goes to Climate First, replacing oil and gas, or Sea Frog for short, one of Ventura County's most effective environmental watchdogs. They have built a team of experts who take on the oil industry, campaign for clean air and water, and advocate for the health and safety of all Ventura County residents. They challenge the status quo with facts and common sense proposals and fight bad projects that hurt our environment and jeopardize our health. Sea Frog is proud to have won unanimous approval by the Board of Supervisors for a moratorium on new oil drilling activities in the Oxnard Plain in order to protect our water. Fought successfully against an expanded oil field near a low-income community with a high pollution burden, won a vote from the Board of Supervisors to begin all new projects under modern environmental review, supported the inclusion of a robust climate action plan in Ventura County's new general plan, and administered a successful community air monitoring program in low-income communities. Sea Frog is making a difference in Ventura County. Please give generously as you always do.
Hello, I'm Dr. Ross Quinn. This morning, the homily is called a fractured homily because it's in pieces. Here's the first piece. It's hitchhiking. In the past few weeks, I've tried to find the subject for my homily this morning. I, like most of us, feel as though we've been ripped apart by the past year's events and thoughts and politics and feelings and sickness. I admit to having been at times overwhelmed and even frozen. What should I feel or do or say in these fractured times? It's one thing to find one's voice, but deciding exactly what to say is entirely another. Well, I decided that I really want to speak about lessons learned in my life, and that the place to start is in my past, over 50 years ago now, hitchhiking. In another age, in the spring of 1968, in April, I was hitchhiking across the country from Santa Barbara to Washington, D.C. for a Unitarian Universalist LRY youth conference there. My plan was to hitchhike as far as I could and then fly, if necessary, to arrive on time. Now that might sound absolutely crazy to you now, as it did to my parents then, but I was almost 19 years old and could not be dissuaded. I did it to save money. I had lots of time, but no cash. Maybe you can picture it. Halfway across the country, I finally got stuck in McAllister, Oklahoma. My long hair prevented me from getting another ride. Frustrated, with no alternative, and late in the afternoon with the day gone, I hopped a freight train heading east inside an empty boxcar. That was something new for me. It's scary. It crashed and lurched down the tracks, reaching Little Rock, Arkansas, late that night. I saw reddish glows of distant fires. In the city dump, I thought. That train stopped there, but I found another one, with another empty boxcar heading east. The next morning, after a sleepless night, that train stopped in a larger city, Memphis. My time to hitchhike was over. Now I had to fly. I grabbed my duffel bag, jumped off the boxcar, and walked a main drag from the train yard towards the tall buildings of downtown, where I could buy a plane ticket and ride the airport transport. The street was absolutely quiet, and I had an eerie feeling. All the storefronts were closed, all the houses were shut. There was no traffic, no pedestrians. A few blocks on, I saw an unsold newspaper in a rack. The giant headline read, "King killed in Memphis." I had not known. There were no cell phones then, no way to hear the news. A couple of blocks further, I saw the first of many freshly burned buildings on that street. I slowly realized that Memphis had rioted in the wake of Dr. King's death and burned, and that probably the red fires in Little Rock were from the city and not from its dump. Then behind me came the first sounds of traffic. I turned to see only a large military vehicle, a troop carrier, filled with about a dozen helmeted, armed military in battle fatigues. They slowed to look at me, automatic guns at their side, but just seeing a young white kid walking alone, the force just drove on through that occupied ghetto. I saw no other people on that long walk, except the wide eyes of a young black child peering out incredulously at me through a couple of tinted slats in the family's front door blinds. He abruptly turned away from me and the slats snapped closed. He was, no doubt, ordered away from the dangerous front door by his mother. Unlike me, a privileged white stranger, that black family knew all too well what was going on, what had gone on really for generations, and of the need for forced quarantine, the need to disengage from the violence, to preserve their lives in an occupied city. On our way to the airport, we drove past the motel where Dr. King was murdered just a few days before. Can you imagine? The impassive white driver stretched his bony hand out his window, pointed to the left and up to the second floor. "That's where they got him," he said. No shock, no remorse, no anger. I was nearly and accidentally witness to mass depersonalization, murder, mass rioting, and militarized police while hitchhiking in 1968. Today, in the face of our fractured lives, I think courage is an appropriate theme for a meditation. I'll start with number 698, Encouraging Words by my old LRY friend and now retired Unitarian Universalist minister, Reverend Wayne Arneson. Wayne wrote, "Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone." Though we gather electronically this morning, let's take a moment to quiet ourselves, to get comfortable. Maybe closing our eyes, or maybe meditating visually on the slides as they come. I like the feeling of sitting in my chair, feet firmly connected to the ground, feeling the support the earth gives us, holding us up, even as we're being drawn towards its center. The breath of the earth, its air, becomes our breath, our lives. Breathe it in. This gift of Gaia becomes and sustains our life. As we breathe in and out slowly and deeply, somehow I feel a peace, a resoluteness. No matter what, I am supported, comforted by the gift of our breath, of our breathing together. When we are physically together in church, it's easy to know we are not alone. We hear the cadenced breaths, the comforting sounds of those little movements we all unconsciously make, the quick scratch of an itch, the stretch of a tight neck. We are human. Sometimes we may even open our eyes a moment to further reassure ourselves that we have this precious company. It's easy when we are together, yet today, even though we are physically apart, feel the faces, imagine the bodies of those who are distant. Those who are here with us electronically, and those who are not, but who are yet dear to us. Those who have passed away from us in estrangement or in death, but who yet live within us. And those not yet born, those smiling new ones, whose grace, openness, and innocence we can now only imagine. Take a moment to think or say their names. Take these last few breaths and have the courage to smile. We are not alone. We are together, all truly one, a circle of life. Our fractures are healed in this moment, in this place, in this company. We are all together. Now, if they are closed, let us open our eyes gently and return to our service together. The second portion of the fracture is just that, feeling fractured. My friends, that story illustrates why I feel fractured and why I wrote a fractured homily. We just don't seem to care about each other anymore. We now lived in a warped time of regression propelled by greed and selfishness. We've spun backwards into an unloving time when racism has again become open and rampant, when our political leaders play on fear instead of challenging us to do and to be our best. So here come a couple of lessons. The first is going to church, another section. These fractured feelings reflect what I think is the biggest issue of our times, our ability to depersonalize, to dehumanize others, to make them unimportant to ourselves. There's just less love. We seem to have lost our capacity to care for each other. We seem to have voided our social contracts between the generations, old and young, between the ill and the well, between the haves and the have-nots, between the whites and the non-whites. And it's not just those other people. Normal people also dehumanize others. I've seen it in the occupied city of Memphis over 50 years ago. I've seen it in prison guards and police officers. I've seen it in protesters, in racists, in politicians, and tyrants of every type, in all true believers. You don't look or behave like me. You scare me. I fear you'll hurt me or rob me. So you are less worthy than me. You just don't matter to me. You are a jerk. You become an it. These feelings and the broken relationships they cause and of which they are a symptom, I feel, are at the core of our warped world. A lack of respect, a lack of relationship, a lack of love, of active exclusion from our own personal webs. The Jewish philosopher Martin Buber also felt these currents in the era of World War I and the killer influenza epidemic of that time. When human relationships are depersonalized, his pronoun for another was it. It. But when a relationship is personalized, the pronoun for the other is thou. Thou signifying respect, a spark of holy humanity and of love. The good news is that we UUs also have a way forward, an answer. I believe we have the tools and the power to find the beloved goodness and love that we seek through our UU history and theology, both in our frontal lobe, reasoned Unitarian side, and in our loving, feeling Universalist side, which are united through our unique seventh principle. Now, we obviously need clear-eyed academic types who can find and promote rigorous truth and expose misunderstanding and lies. But equally, we need the loving forgiveness of our Universalist types who preached radical love, radical forgiving of sin and error. We remember their teachings that heaven is universally available and achievable in this life in every person, that we must literally love the hell out of the afflicted. We need this fervent emotional side as well. And we also have the unifying genius of our seventh Unitarian Universalist principle, its call to respect the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. To me, our seventh principle implies that all which exists, the good and the bad, the holy and the evil, that every bit of it is necessary to complete the interdependent web. Accordingly, each of us is a worthy, sacred, and necessary part of the web of life, our weak and our strong sides alike. We each fully belong, both our Universalist and our Unitarian sides. Recall also our third principle, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. We know we're not perfect, but we are charged by the third principle to try to become better, to try to love better. We need to change and evolve. We know that bettering our imperfect world requires effort to better our imperfect selves. We can and we must give our love to all those who are stuck, even if evil, even if they do not respond well to us. At our best, we know that all deserve deep mutual respect. Our faith has instilled that lesson in me. It takes personal work to make the world better, more just, to overcome the tendency within us to depersonalize others, which is to say, to exclude them from our personal web, to make a person into an it. When we attend to our theology, our seventh and the other principles, we can sink together in our love and personal power to rewrite the social contracts of caring. As our hymn sings, we would be one since we are all imperfect and need to grow, we need to evolve in compassion. Love and respect disarm hatred. Love lets the messages of truth, of art and science be heard when hatred and fear have prevented it. Love and the compassion it generates powers the moral arc of the universe towards truth and justice. Love causes us and our universe to improve and evolve. It's hard to devalue or depersonalize other when, as Buber puts it, the pronoun for the other is a sacred thou. Love repersonalizes us. Section 4 of the Fractured homily today is going to camp. Now, I learned all those lessons in our Ventura church, in which I grew up. I will close with thoughts of lessons from another place I was privileged to go in the early transformative years of my life, our UU Camp de Venneville Pines. It was there in the early 1960s that I began to intuit the reality of an interrelated wilderness ecosystem, a web of life, in which all, including humans, are an integral part. Our camp taught me that a cathedral can indeed be made of pines and blue sky and black-capped chickadees, that our natural environment, especially its wilderness, is holy, that preserving it is sacred work, which requires deeply felt respect. Our camp is a naturally healing place. The Venneville Pines is where I go to heal my life's fractures. I'm very conscious of this. I just don't want to go to our camp. I need to go because I am fractured, hurt, tired, confused, depersonalized. At camp, I find friends, renewed energy, clarity, encouragement, and increased creativity stimulated by the sights and sounds and smells and light and company of the wild mountains. My friends, my final lesson is this: that our Camp de Venneville Pines, I've learned, like our Ventura Church, is the physical embodiment of our Unitarian and Universalist heritage, of our web. Both helped me to mature and to grow and to even intuit the seventh principle before it was written. I pray that both will always survive as places to develop our UU love, where we can heal and promote wholeness, where we can learn to bend the moral arc of the universe, and where we can come together as thous, as sacred, for many, many generations to come. May we work together to make it so. Namaste. The holiness in you always brings out the holiness in me. And blessed be each and every one here this morning as guardians of the heritage flame within us. Thank you.
Please join me in extinguishing your chalices at home. We extinguish the chalice, but not the light in our hearts. We extinguish the chalice, but not the wisdom and commitment to one another that we have gained here today. May we carry that wisdom and commitment out into the world until we meet again.
Go in peace, go in love. Namaste, blessed be, and amen.
We hope you've enjoyed listening to 50 Years of UU Hitchhiker's Theology, presented by UU Society of the High Desert President Ross Quinn, recorded on August 9th, 2020, from the Unitarian Universalist Church of Ventura, California.